can't believe it! I'm finally in a JRPG game! This is incredible!
Not so fast.
Huh? No, that can't be!
That's right. It is me, Lornaldo Prime, and I am here to see to your end.
Nice try, but this will be our final battle before I inevitably decide to end this gimmick.
We shall see. Let's do battle.
Hello and welcome to this edition of the Halcyon Show. My name is Lorne Wisely and I'm going to be your host for this episode. I like JRPGs, don't get a chance to play them very often because of the length of time it takes to play them and the level of lore that there tends to be within those types of games. There's just so much to dissect and digest in those games that either become obsessed with it to the point where you want to know everything about it and you get pissed off when they don't release the 7th installment remastered like they keep saying they will, or you just throw it by the wayside and you don't care. But what happens when an indie developer takes a run at one of these types of games? Well, then you get a game like this, Hydroactive. Released on the 4th of December 2017 and developed by Scythuz and published by New Reality Games, currently priced on Steam for £1.99, the game is a one-party member combat which is simple to pick up but tricky to master with a weapon switching system that encourages strategic thinking, puzzles that go beyond your usual switch and block based fare, a quirky cast of memorable characters. Sure. Hydroactive is a post-apocalyptic sci-fi RPG featuring tactical turn-based combat, devious puzzles and engaging exploration elements. The game is set within a world where the majority of natural landmass has been destroyed by unknown causes. The world is now ruled by corporations, each with their own goals and interests. You play as Nutbolt, an early explorer bot prototype built by the Tsar Corporation, ZARR for all those mathmans out there. Your mission will be to investigate hazardous areas to combat threats. Throughout the game, Nutbolt will acquire weapons and tools to help him. Some increase Nutbolt's offensive capabilities in combat, while others are more strategic and options can be used outside of combat to help solve puzzles and reach previously inaccessible areas. You will shoot, slash your way through hordes of enemies, each with their own weaknesses and resistances. You will explore ruined corporate buildings, you will solve puzzles, and you will avoid treacherous threats. I agree with maybe 40% of that, and the 40% that I agree with, by the way, is absolutely fine and done really, really well. It's just that because this is only Act 1 of what I presume to be a 3-act series, and only one act has been released so far, a lot of what has been said there just straight up doesn't exist. Just a little bit more from the developer here. A unique premise influenced by Fallout, Waterworld and various cyberpunk novels that rewards exploration and discourages speedy playthroughs, a wide range, well, by the way, on that point, not according to the reviews, but that's fine. A wide range of areas to travel through, an atmospheric and engaging electronic soundtrack. Those last two I would go so far as to agree with to a certain degree. Overall, I did really enjoy this part of the game. I feel weird calling this a game review because this really just doesn't feel like a full game. Ultimately, anything else that I'm about to say about this section of the game, that point needs to be highlighted quite vigorously. This is not, by any stretch of the imagination, a full game, quote unquote, because there's just too much about it that feels incomplete or just not finished. But what is here is encouraging and fun. So I guess it's probably best to just dive right in it. Let's start by talking about the gameplay and everything that you're going to be physically doing in this act of the game.
The game is set up in what feels like a very traditional JRPG, setup that felt familiar from the second I picked up the game. Exploration and combat are the main focus, but there is a degree of puzzle solving, albeit in very small increments. But let's start with the exploration first, since this is a game that boasts levels with branching paths, but a linear story, and it offers players a degree of control over their destiny. There are multiple rooms that are not essential to visit, but offer additional battles for credits and additional items to increase your power. You also gain some credits for locating highlighted points in the level that offer some exposition, and they're super easy to find, and they're a nice little bonus. But let's dive into the combat. I liked it, but I'll be honest with you, and I'll say that the combat can be pretty repetitive. You have enemies that appear having been alerted to you, engaging you in a switched view to better see the character models rather than their sprites, and you can select a course of action. Players of any JRPG or even casual gamers used to Pokemon will be instantly familiar to the system, albeit you can battle up to 3 enemies at a time in this system. You can select an action, be it an attack, use of an item, or indeed attempt to flee the battle if you see no reason to fight. This only really applies to enemies that you find in the open world, as you'll find battling them over and over again to be less beneficial than in other games that have an express leveling system where growing a level exponentially increases your stats or affords you new perks. In this game, there is no such incentive, so the grindy battles are either best avoided entirely or fled to save time. Now, in terms of combat, you have the option to use healing items or gems that offer you the ability to use power-based attacks, limited to fire in this first installment, a normal attack which uses no special points, or special attacks that have different attributes. The weapons have different effects and uses on different enemies, but I ended up favouring one particular weapon given its superior stats. This weapon allowed me to use the cleave to attack all enemies on the screen at once, a strong attack to attempt to deal heavier damage but moderated to a certain degree, and a devastator to attempt to defeat a single enemy outright at a time, or at least do as much damage to bosses as possible. However, these attacks can only be used if you have enough attack points to do so, and regaining these can only be done when you're attacked and someone does damage to you, or you rest between turns. In short, if you want to use your cool you have to be patient, which I do and I don't like. I like it because it forces you to be strategic. But then again, so did Pokemon's PP system. But it meant that I could use my cool moves as much as I like, and if I f***ed up and used that move too many times and didn't foresee its use in a future battle, it's kind of my fault. This layout, it just feels a little bit too prohibitive. It's a turn-based system, and each turn you can only execute one action, be that an attack, heal yourself with repair kits that you find in the battle or earn. However, your foes all get a turn each, so you need to be mindful of their potential damage when approaching the fight. Do you attempt to eliminate each foe individually? Take down weaker foes and thin the herd and stem the damage that you can incur? Or do you attempt to take them all down over a sustained period throughout the course of the battle? Well, like R. Kelly's testimony style, it's best to mix things up with a frantic bout of action and then cautious defense. It's critical in later battles to ensure that you go in with full health and try to make it as easy as possible to retain as much health as you can by damaging enemies as quickly as possible, in that it will often take you just 2 turns to recover from sufficient damage. I think I only ended up with about 450 hit points, and a health kit will only repair 250 points worth. Let's quickly mention the bosses, because even though they're tougher than hell, they often have cool avatars and different movesets to other enemies, they're effectively attack sponges and they just tank damage. There's no real skill or tactic involved in taking them down, you just have to keep up the attack until they fall, which of course they will. In fact, I was never defeated throughout the course of my gameplay. But is it fun? Well, of course, to a certain degree. The flourishes of the heavy moves, the effect damage on special attacks, the boss battles that drag on and become slogs of titans wrecking each other, it's always going to be fun. I just wish it was slightly less stringent with the attacks you can use and a little bit less repetitive. Now, I will say that the game offers you a kind of progression system of sorts. Maybe, kinda, yeah. The credits you accrue from battle can be used to purchase stat increase items. However, I didn't find that these had any real effect on my combat effectiveness at all. Enemies took damage at a similar rate. I wasn't any quicker or more agile to avoid attacks. The only buffs that seem to make much of a difference are the health and gem upgrades, since they offer you a direct benefit in combat by increasing your gem efficiency or capacity, and the same with health. Now let's talk about the puzzles in this game, which come in the form of simple mazes that you have to navigate to progress the level, often guarded by enemies or leading to dead ends or yielding additional power-ups. They're easy enough, but a welcome distraction. In between missions, you'll explore the base of operations, where you can interact, albeit in a limited way, with NPCs, restock your repair kits, pick up upgrades, and speak to mission givers. This is a nice touch and allows you to take a moment to take in the story and enjoy the scenery. Now, as mentioned at the beginning of the review, the game is only Act 1 of the story arc according to the game's annotations. The second act is yet to be released. However, it will take you between 1 or 2 hours depending on how much you choose to explore the game to complete, and indeed how long it takes you to get to grips with its combat system and take down the larger enemies. Due to the game being only part of a larger game design, there are clear holes in what is presented to you, such as additional weapons, armor sets, allies to fight alongside you, for instance, and I wish this was less noticeable, but one would hope that, like my love life, something will fill that gaping emotional void worth waiting for, but given it's been well over a year in both instances, it's rather doubtful.
Now with the gameplay out of the way, let's talk about how the game is designed. Now again, I need to preface by saying that there are some elements of the game's design that are mentioned in the premise of this game that are just straight up not here, but let's not try to focus on that too much. Let's try and focus on what this act of this game has to offer you.
The game functions really quickly, the load times are almost non-existent, saving is quick, and easy with multiple slots for multiple playthroughs if desired, and the menu is easy to navigate to view your current weapon and armor set, stats, inventory and the like. The graphics and design in this game are about as good as I've seen, rivaled only really by Dash. The enemy sprites and avatars, the levels, the characters, the transitions, the animations, and indeed the sound design, soundtrack, and pretty much anything are beautifully put together. Seamless even. If you're a fan of JRPGs, you'll appreciate the level of detail on offer here. The only gripe I have is the palette swap of Nutbolt and the baddie at the end, but we can forgive the game for that given that it not only makes sense, they're both built by the same person in Quint, and let's be honest, it's far from the first Japanese media export to use incredibly familiar variants of the same character designs or models to pad out the lore and score a cheap swerve on its audience. Don't believe me? You tell me that Bardock, Goku, Goku Black, Gohan and Goten are basically the same character design due to basically trying to ease the tension of the animation studios having to animate different characters all the time rather than a story-based reason. And remember, Jesus is watching now, so be honest with yourself, or perhaps it's Zenny. Zenny is the DBZ reference, so perhaps Zenny is more appropriate. Anyway, the soundtrack in the battles is a little Mortal Kombat-ish as well, but I can kind of live with that. The game responds well to commands, the swap between modes is smooth and immersive, the music snaps in and out nicely, with the exception of the end of battles, where the soundtrack kind of gets bored of you taking your time, slows down to an almost halt, and then just jumps back into the theme of the level even when you're not done. But aside from that, it's impossible to fault the quality of this game. It is really rather impressive for an indie title. Add to this the dialogue, which sure isn't going to earn a standing ovation from the Cannes Film Festival, but certainly does its job including you in, and keeping you up to speed with the goings-on of the world. And if you have no interest in the text, then you can space your way through in a jiffy. Win-win for everybody.
And now with the gameplay and the presentation out of the way, let's talk about something that I don't get a chance to talk about very often in my reviews of indie games at least. Let's talk about the narrative and story that this game has to offer you.
So, I'll be honest, the story reminds me of pretty much every other story ever with a manga/anime element to it. Team/duo of quirky but cool people, often with special powers and names that make no sense at all, make their way to a destination with little known, but do battle to unearth the true foe, get defeated and or narrowly miss out on capturing the big bad, all while a secret lurks in the background which is so obvious you'd have to be actively looking in any direction but the story to figure out the twist down the line. Totes original, I know. So in this world, water has pretty much covered the planet. With no land masses to speak of, the people of the world, specifically the organisation you will work for, have managed to turn water into an energy source, which has in turn led them to helping revolutionise their technology and bring themselves back from the brink of extinction. In this new world, Nutbolt, an exploration/combat mechanoid, has been tasked with investigating a disturbance at a power plant, and from there, the story unfolds. The characters have decent banter, but again are somewhat predictable. Nutbolt is softly spoken, polite but bold. Quint is the overly stern but good-hearted tech support and guide. You have a director, you have a quirky sidekick in the lab, and you have another stern but strong female lead figure, which I imagine would have been fleshed out in the second act, but obviously we never got to that. There are other characters, but there's no real time to get to know them as the game is just too short to flesh them out. The bad guy makes an appearance right at the end, but I won't spoil the nature of this exchange since it's one of the few high points in the game. On the whole though, the game does not really do enough with its premise and characters, I feel. It's got a great premise and a great world to build on, and goes largely ignored, which is both a shame and a source of potential if the game ever gets a sequel. I mean, think about it, a world where water is a resource and abundant, leading to an explosion of technology. It sounds awesome, but this concept is never really explored to its fullest potential.
So in summary, how do I feel? I feel disappointed that there's not a second and third act of this game by now. I feel disappointed that I don't get a chance to fully explore and realise the story that this game set up. I mean, it's very rare again that you come across a story that genuinely piques your interest and you go, I wonder where they go with this, from a completely unrelated standpoint where you're literally a new guy coming into the game. I have no attachment to the game, I have no attachment to the developer, no attachment to the characters or anything like that, but the story hooks you and goes, okay, let's see where they take this ball and run with it. But to date, they really haven't. And with what they managed in the game based on the premise, it's ultimately under-delivering on what it has, its potential. But that's the encouraging sign. If they ever did do a second or third act, the potential here with this game in terms of its story, gameplay mechanics, if they introduce new characters, a multi-party combat system, more exploration, then this game could be something really, really interesting. And from a JRPG perspective, something kind of unique in the sense that it's not another Final Fantasy game, not another Pokemon game, not another Neo Tank or anything along those lines. This could be something that the indie market gets to really enjoy for itself. But what kind of gamer would enjoy this game? Well, I would imagine that even with the lack of a complete game and the somewhat repetitive nature of it, this is a perfect platform for new gamers of JRPGs to get into because of how simple it is, how non-overwhelming it is, how easy to get into it is, and again, the level of potential that it is to grow now that you've got a baseline understanding of what the genre has to offer you. It's one of those games that I would love to see embellished a little bit and fleshed out a little bit. But given the length of time it's been since this installment was released and the fact that there isn't a second one that I've been able to find at least not on Steam, I don't think it's going to happen. So maybe treat this game as an entry to the genre, not necessarily the series. And then I think you've got yourself a good game here. In terms of the price point, $1.99, I've got to be honest with you. I would be happy to pay $1.99 for this game because I got a level of enjoyment out of it and I'd be happy to play it again with the understanding that $1.99 was going to go towards the development of a second game. But for the casual person, I think it's a bit too expensive for what is in effect an incomplete game. So I'd recommend checking it out, but I'd recommend trying to get it on sale if you can. But ultimately, it comes down to what you think. Hydroactive, have you played the game? Have you seen the game? Have you seen other games like it? Have you seen other games that take this premise of a brand new JRPG and try to run with it but ultimately stumble or succeed? I'd be really interested to see what kind of games that you guys have got in mind when you think of JRPGs and the indie market, because to my knowledge, I don't really see very many of them very often, and I enjoyed the hell out of this game. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. But in the meantime though, thank you very much for watching this edition of the Halcyon Show. Please like, share and subscribe, and check out some of the other content creators in the description below, including Entertainment, a content creator who I've been following very closely, who is absolutely smashing the shit out of YouTube right now. So please go and support him. Also feel free to go and check me out, little old me on Defunct Games. Why wouldn't you want to watch more of this over on Defunct Games channel? We did a couple of quizzes recently. All things being well, we're going to do another podcast. That might be on this channel or it might be on his channel, who knows, but we might be doing more of those. You might also see me pop up other places soon. Again, can't really talk about where and why and when at the moment, but we'll get into that assuming that I have the wherewithal to actually get those done. Also, check me out on Twitter, usually hurling abuse at someone over there, so by all means go follow me. Also, check me out on BShoot. It's another website that I've decided to upload my content onto. I'm going to be trying to upload there on a regular basis, so if you don't like YouTube for whatever reason, then feel free to check me out over there. In the meantime though, thank you very much once again for watching. I've been your host, Norman Risley. Please take care of yourselves, and I'll see you on the next episode of The Halcyon Show.
It's finally over! I have bested you, Leonardo Prime! No longer shall your reign of terror continue! You are defeated!
Ha! You really think you've won? I'm only getting warmed up.
Huh? That's not possible!
No, you'll see. I'll be back in an indeterminate and somewhat annoyingly timed part of your upcoming story in a sufficiently stronger form, but not as strong as I will later go on to become.
And I'll be waiting, Lornaldo. I'll be waiting.